the actual scroll. And I know not many people have the chance in their lifetimes to actually see the scroll, to actually even get an honor to come to the Torah. So this is going to be a hands-on, right there, explaining exactly what it is that you're looking at. I hope you enjoy.
So I just want to mention, we're going to watch a couple of videos that Cantor pre-recorded. If you're watching us on Facebook and you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. And then after the videos, we'll come back and we can ask our questions. So I'm going to share the videos now.
Hi everybody, here I am in the Friedman Levitt Sanctuary. Behind me is the beautiful Ark, and I've taken out a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll, and today I'm going to be sharing with you some scroll secrets, explaining to you how a Torah is written, what kind of instruments are used to write it, what it's written on, what kind of parchment, and other very interesting details. So I'm going to turn the camera around and start to show you an actual part of the Torah, and I've chosen something you're all familiar with, the Ten Commandments. So here we go. So here we have two pieces of parchment, which is called cloth, which are sewn together. And after they're sewn together, they put a bit of tape just to make sure it doesn't come apart. One on top and one on the bottom. Now the actual parchment itself, the cloth, the scribe, the sofer, etches lines horizontal and vertical. Just one vertical, and you can see all of these horizontal lines, and the letters are written underneath the line, as opposed to what we do when we have a lined piece of paper and we write on top of the line. Here you see the letters all hang from the lines. Now, what is used to write the Torah? Well, what is used is a feather from a bird, and usually it's an ostrich. They want a big feather. And they use ink, very special recipe they use, which goes back thousands of years to the kind of ink that they use. Now, over here, you can see this is where I have opened up the scroll to the Ten Commandments. And I will use the yad, it's called the yad, which is another word for hand in Hebrew, and that's what we use to point to the Torah. We're not supposed to use our fingers because it can smudge the ink, and there's a holiness to the Torah itself, so we try not to touch it with our hands. So here I'm going to point to this word, Zachor. There it is, which means remember. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. Remember the Sabbath day, lekodsho, to keep it holy. And down here we have Kabed et Avicha ve'et Imecha. Honor your father and your mother. And here we have all of these no-nos. Do not murder, lo tirtzach, lo tignov, do not rob, commit theft. Now, another interesting thing about the scribe and the kind of plan he uses when he writes the Torah is that this particular plan, just about every single column starts with this letter Vav. You see the Vav over here? Vayomer, there's the Vav. And if we go to this column over here, there's another Vav, Vatagid. And over here, the next column, here's another Vav. There are a few exceptions in the Torah where it actually doesn't start with a Vav on the top of the column. One of them is the very famous prayer that we sing when we actually start services, Matovu, how beautiful are your dwelling places, O Jacob. And if I showed you that Matovu in this Torah, you'd see the mem for Matovu right on top here. It's unusual. So let's see what else we can tell you about the Torah. You will notice that some of the letters have what we call serifs. These are little decorations. And here's a Zion. I'm pointing to it now. You see there's 3 little lines going up. Above it is a Shein and another Shein there with 3 little lines. There's another one over there. If we go over here, this is a Chet, and it only has 1 line. So there are certain rules that the scribe adheres to, and the letters Gimel, Zayin, Tet, Nun, Ayin, Tzadik, and Shein, they have 3 lines as serifs on top of the letter. The letters Bet, Daled, Hey, Chet, and Kuf have only 1. All other letters don't have any serifs on them. So we found many letters with 3 on them, and the Chet we found with 1 on them. So let's see if we can find another letter that doesn't have any. And you can see there's many of them. Here we have a Pei, a Samach, and a Lamed. Okay? And there's an Aleph over there, and a Hey. Now there's a Chet again, and it has 1 line above it. Now, if we go up on top, Vayedaber Elohim, can you see that? There's 1 on the Daled, and 1 on the Bet, and 1 on the Hey. So these are certain rules that the scribe has to adhere to when he writes the scroll. And it takes at least a year or year and a half to write one, because it's all handwritten. And if he makes a mistake, he has to get rid of it and start again. So here, let me read for you this part of the 10 Commandments. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekodsho, sheshet yamim tavod, ve'asita kol melachtecha, ve'yom hashvi'i Shabbat l'Adonai Elohecha, lo taseh kol melacha, ata uvincha uvitcha. Where are we? Ve'avdecha v'amatcha, uvhemtecha ve'gercha, asher bish'arecha. Ki sheshet yamim, asa Adonai et hashamayim, ve'et haaretz, et hayam ve'et kol asher bam, vayanach bayom hashvi'i. Al kein, berach Adonai et yom hashabbat, vayekadeshehu. So there's a section of the 10 Commandments. Now, people have asked, how can somebody read Hebrew without vowels? And you can see there are no vowels here. Let me get a close-up, a real close-up to some of the letters. Now, I show you a word that I guarantee you can read without vowels. Here it is over here. That word is Yom. It means day. And the next word you probably know, HaShabbat. Now, question is, it has no vowels. How do I know that it's Yom and not Yum? How do I know that this Vav doesn't have a dot in the middle? Because there isn't such a word as Yum. It's context. It says, remember the day of Shabbat. So it has to be Yom. And this could be anything. It could be HaShevet or HaShavut. It could be anything, but it's remember the day of Shabbat, because they're talking about Shabbat. So it has to be Shabbat. So how do we read without vowels? We use context. If you go to Israel and you buy a newspaper, you will see there are no vowels in it. And people just know, based on context, what the word is supposed to be. So here I've shown you some of the little details and secrets that I use to write a Torah. I hope you enjoyed it. And in the future, I will bring you other kinds of secrets of our rituals, which I hope you'll enjoy. And in fact, if you have any questions to me about certain rituals, why we do what we do, why we stand, why we bow, I'll be happy to make a video explaining all of those intricate details. In the meantime, stay safe and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
All right. So we've got a few questions and a couple comments from Facebook. One is, we've never heard that we used an ostrich feather before. Why an ostrich? And why still a feather?
Actually, I made a mistake. It's not ostrich, it's a turkey feather.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Because it's hard to imagine that a scribe 1,000 years ago would have access to ostrich feathers.
Okay.
But they did have access to turkey. I meant to say turkey. It's a large bird. The reason they use a feather because it's natural. They want to use anything that's natural. That's part of nature.
So very literally dipping the feather in the ink and writing.
That's correct.
Wow. Okay. Let's see it. Lou is watching again. He had a couple of comments. I think there's only 5 columns that don't begin with the Vav. And of course, one, of course, is the very beginning, Bereshit bara Elohim. So only 5 columns in the Torah that don't begin with a Vav.
Correct.
Wow. Interesting.
However, that's only with the Torah where most of the columns begin with a Vav.
Mm-hmm.
There are other versions of the Torah where it's not that way.
So that was the rest of his comment was that exactly, but that most of the new ones are that version that start with, that have the Vav.
Yes, correct.
Interesting. And so is there a reason for that, or it just is a tradition that evolved?
If you think about it, if you have to write, and I think there's 264 columns altogether.
Okay.
You have to plan it out, so it's all going to fit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have to do that, you need some kind of plan where each letter goes. And this is just through the ages, scribes have figured out the best plan how to get everything in these columns. And somehow they figured out if you start with a Vav on top, you're going to end with a certain word at the bottom. So it's going to work. It's going to work.
Gotcha. So they're working on one piece of parchment at a time. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then they're sewing it all together.
Correct.
So do you have any idea how many pieces of those parchments make up the whole Torah?
I think I just read it. I think it's no. I don't know. I don't know that. It was the columns. I think was 264. The number of, and I think that also varies, depending on the scribe and how big the size of the actual scroll is that he's using. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and I've never, although I've seen it laid out before, I've never seen it up close to see the grid that was on it. That the Sofar puts on there. I had no idea that was there, and I've always wondered how in the world you could line it up so perfectly. So that was really interesting to see that up close.
It's fantastic, and it's etched in with a very sharp instrument, almost like a knife.
And it's invisible to just stand up and see it laid out. Unless you really look up close, you can't see it. It's that subtle.
It's a guideline, and I find it fascinating that the letters actually hang from it.
Yeah.
That you don't write on top.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I think the Quran that the Muslims use is also written that it's similarly where they etch something, and I believe they hang the letters.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
I think so. I'm sure there are people out there who will correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm watching Facebook. Hopefully someone will chime in and tell us that.
Yeah.
So the Sofar is fascinating to me. Like I'm really curious. How does one become a Sofar? Where do you train? How long does it take to train? And do you know much about that?
I don't know too much about it. I do know that most Sofrim, which is a plural, are rabbis.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yes. And they have rabbinical degrees, and they have studied all the laws concerning being a scribe, and all the traditions involved with it, and they learn at the hand of a master usually. It could take maybe a year or two until they are ready to go out on their own and write a Torah. It's a skill that takes quite a while to perfect.
I'm sure, especially if it takes a year or more to actually complete the job. I mean, in your lifetime, it's not like you're going to produce thousands of them. I mean, it's such a small number that you'll even produce in your lifetime. It's really amazing.
Right.
So just, I assume that on a regular basis, someone checks to make sure that there's no flaws, there's nothing, that people are checking the Torah on a regular basis. How does that work?
Yeah, again, it would be the sofer, the scribe, who would come and check it. And it's a very time-consuming thing, because he has to go through line by line, word by word, and double check that there are first of all, there's no mistakes.
Right.
Like there's an extra letter or the letter missing. And then once that's done, he has to go back and make sure that he doesn't find a letter that's been erased somehow or half erased, that it's not legible.
Okay.
Because if it becomes illegible, then the Torah is what we call pasul. It cannot be used until he has corrected it.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask next, is if he finds there is a smudge or some sort of damage to a part of it, then can you remove that piece of parchment and fix it and put it back? Or does it whole Torah?
No, it depends on how bad the damage is. Most of the time it's repairable, and he can actually take part of another scroll and he can sew it in, or if he can find a way to erase whatever's left, and then he can write over it correctly, that works. But there are times when it's just so badly damaged that we can talk about that. Is that the next question?
That's leading into the next question. So if it can't be repaired, or if the whole Torah is damaged, like in a flood, for example, what do you do with it?
Well, we treat the Torah just like we treat human beings, with dignity. And just like we bury our dead, we bury the scroll. And we bury it in a specific part of a Jewish cemetery, and it's called Geniza. Not just the Sefer Torah, not just the scroll, but any holy books that we have, like Chumash, the Bible, and the Talmud, the Gemara, the Mishnah, any books like that are no longer being used and would be thrown out. We pile them all together and put them in a grave, and it's called the Geniza. And Rabbi comes and says a prayer just like he would for someone who died.
Okay. How long? What's the lifespan of a Torah? Like, how long can it really last before it becomes unrepairable? Is there a kind of a general lifespan?
I would say, it's just like if you buy a suit, and if you buy a really high quality suit, it's going to last quite a while. Like you have that women have that black dress that they.
The classic black dress.
The classic black dress, and if you buy a really good one, you can last for 20, 30 years. And it's the same thing with the Torah. If it's a quality build, it should last 30, 40, 50 years with no problems. Again, but it's also to do with humidity, and if it's
right.
You don't want it anywhere near water, and dry is always best. But if it's kept in the ark and is looked after, it'll last a long, long time.
Do you have any idea the cost to write a Torah? I mean, the investment that it is to have that done?
Well, I've heard it goes from 20 to 50,000.
Okay.
Anywhere in between. And of course, then depending on the size of the Torah, the size of the scroll itself. I mean, the larger it is, the longer it takes to write, because the letters themselves are going to be bigger. And some of them, we have a few in the ark which are just exquisite. It looks like somebody went in with a magnifying glass and took a small one and made it larger, because it's so clear and beautifully written. Wow. And those I'm sure today, if you wanted to write something like that, it would be $30,000 and $50,000, and it would probably take closer to 2 years.
Then I'm surprised it doesn't cost more, because the sofer is obviously not making very much money if that's all it costs. I mean, if it's a year to 2 years investment of time, I'm actually surprised it's not more expensive.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. But he doesn't spend 24 hours a day, doing that.
Sure,
So he
sure.
usually has other work that he's doing. He's earning money for that. So this is probably in addition to what he's making.
Gotcha. Okay. So something I've always wondered, every time I see the Torah taken out and we pass it around or we walk around the sanctuary with it, what happens if you drop it?
Well, the tradition is if you drop it, you fast for 40 days.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow.
You fast for 40 days. It's not a kind of fast where you, like Yom Kippur, where you fast from the previous night to the next night, the whole 24 hours, where it's a fast where, just like with Ramadan, with the Muslims, you eat first thing in the morning and you eat last thing at night. So you fast all during the day. Yeah, breakfast and you have a
like set up to sundown, basically.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. But it's, I don't know of a case where that has actually happened.
I was going to ask you if in all of your experience, if you've ever seen that before.
I've never seen it happen. And in fact, I've never seen a Torah. I've been on the Bema for 54 years. And I can say I've never seen a Torah dropped. I know it's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah,
as many times as I've seen people drop a prayer book or it's amazing that you've never seen that. I'm shocked.
Yeah. And I think part of that is that people know there's this kind of tradition that if you drop it, you're going to be in trouble. So anytime someone's lifting it, you have 3 or 4 people around them to make sure.
Just in case,
right.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we're very protective.
As we should be.
Yes.
So we didn't get a chance to make a video about the mezuzah scroll, but could you talk about that a little bit? Because those are also written by the Sofar as well, right?
Yes, they are. And the mezuzah, they're tiny, of course, because they have to fit into a little 3, 4, 5-inch mezuzah. So you can imagine how small the scroll is.
They're tiny. Yeah.
They're tiny, but it's still handwritten. And you should be aware, if you want to buy a mezuzah, that you're not getting a printed scroll inside. You have to make sure that it's actually handwritten. And a way to tell is when you open it up, the letters should be a little bit raised. Okay. As opposed to printed, where it wouldn't be. It's like very flat.
Okay.
Letters very flat. So you should check on that. And also, you have to buy something like that from somebody reputable, so you know.
Yeah.
Now here's something very interesting about mezuzah that people didn't know. Originally, we wrote a mezuzah, the Shema and Ve'ahavta, on the doorpost. The actual words were written on the doorpost. There wasn't something we call a mezuzah, which is this small item that we put a scroll into.
Right.
A mezuzah, the word actually means a doorpost. It doesn't mean a small item that you put a scroll in. So what happened when there was anti-Semitism, we weren't about to go and publicize that we were Jews by writing Shema Ve'ahavta on our doorposts.
Right.
There became tradition at that point to take a scroll and put it in a small container and put that on our doorpost.
Okay. I didn't realize
that.
That's
an interesting historical fact.
Yeah, that is interesting. A couple of folks in the Facebook feed said that they have actually seen a Torah fall. It happened at the chapel several years ago. That must be before you were with us. And someone else said that it happened at camp. So people have said it and they said it was awful, awful to watch. I'm sure it's one of those things like you see it almost happening in slow motion and you just want to like run like, no. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, I think we got all of our questions in the Facebook feed, and I think we got all of my questions too. Anything else you can think of to add about the Torah scroll?
To have about the Torah scroll. Well, it's interesting that it has a crown made out of silver, or what they call pamonim. These are the 2 things that fit on top, with bells hanging on, made out of silver also. So we basically try to make the Torah very, very beautiful. And that can be very expensive too. I mean, there are some people who make these are handmade covers, and very, very, very expensive, but beautiful and worthwhile because it's something that we'll use for many, many, many years.
Hopefully a long, long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is when we walk around with the Torah, many people want to kiss the Torah. And there's a tradition that goes back a long time. The rabbi said, no, this is not something that you want to kiss. This is not like an idol. Because a lot of religion, they have items that they kiss, like a cross or wherever it's going to be.
Yeah.
So we're not encouraged to do that. But no, this is the will of the people. And I can tell you what happened when I was in Sinai in Los Angeles. We had a very large Iranian community, Iranian Jews. And on Shabbat, the women would wear very thick lipstick. And as I walked around with the Torah, they just wouldn't put their hands out and touch it. They'd actually grab the Torah and kiss it with their lips. So we had all of these lipstick marks on the Torah itself. So we came to the conclusion that we're not going to allow that anymore. And the rabbi made a big announcement. If you want to kiss the Torah, touch it with your finger, and men take a talit and touch it. So that's the incident of the kissing Torah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that's funny. Well, great. This has been really interesting and really educational. So if there's anyone else who's got questions, and leave them in the Facebook feed and we'll get them answered. And if you have ideas for other things that you'd like to cover for Show and Tell, we're going to keep this series going throughout the summer. We'll go every other week, and hopefully we can share some really interesting things with you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Cantor.
All right. My pleasure. Have a good day.
Take care.